Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of entry of the Commission's decision. We advise that you seek your own independent legal advice to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. Okay. And then per the Tennessee Open Meeting Act, Public Chapter number 300, members of the public are invited to provide comments on matters germane to the Traffic and Parking Commission items on the agenda. So we have some folks who have signed in. We'll get to you in just a minute. I ask today for approval of today's agenda.
Second.
We have a first, we have a second. All in favor? Okay. Approval of minutes of the October 9th meeting. Everybody had a chance to look at these? Okay, is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
It's approved. All right, so before we get to public comment, first of all, I want to welcome my neighbor and Council at Large member Quinn Evans Segal. Thank you very much. We are glad to have you on board and look forward to your input and counsel. So, and she is my neighbor, so I can keep an eye on her in the meantime. So it's great. Thank you. And also, before we get started, Officer Jones will know what I'm talking about, but I called the police about a matter that someone inquired about, and they took care of it. And I just want to thank the police department very much for handling a tricky situation very well. So, thank you. All right. Public comment. You have, when your name is called, come forward. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Keep your item pertinent to items under the purview of the Traffic and Parking Commission. If you have a trash problem, you're at the wrong place. Nicole Williams. Yeah.
Here we go.
If you would sit down, state your name for the record, and then proceed, please. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Nicole Williams. 3 minutes is so much time. At council, they only give us 2 minutes. So, wow, how luxurious. So I technically want to speak about metered parking more generally, but I noticed y'all had a pay parking item on the agenda. So I'm using that. If you could give me a little bit of leeway to just talk about metered parking in general, since that is under your purview. So I am so happy to pay the city for parking, and I'm really glad that we are transitioning into the 21st century. Very pleased about that. But I am concerned about just the inconsistency in the policies regarding maximum time allowed in various zones throughout the city. I'm not really sure what the rationale is. Like if you look at the Gulch, it's got a 3-hour maximum all the time, but Gulch East has a 3-hour maximum until 6 p.m. when then you can extend until 6 hours. And like in Edge Hill, they switched to 3 hours at 5 p.m. Well, what if you park at 4:55? Can I park for 3 hours, or do I have to come back and move my car after 2 hours? So I didn't know if NDOT is required to provide any sort of rationale for how they're making those determinations, or if that comes before the commission for approval. I don't remember like hearing about it on the agendas, but I could have missed it because you guys cover a lot of stuff. So I just want to give like a quick example of a time when I wanted to pay the city to park and was unfortunately forced to use another option. Councilmember Evan Siegel has heard me complain about this, so apologies. So I went to an event at Vanderbilt, and it was a 2.5-hour event. And I got there at like 4:30, so it was before 5 p.m. when the metered parking spaces in Edge Hill switch over to 3 hours. And I was like super excited because now you can pay by your phone. I'm like, yes, I'm gonna pay the city. I'm not gonna use free parking because I really believe in it. And then I found out it was a 2-hour maximum. So instead, I went to my high school and just parked in their parking lot for free. So that's just a personal example of why I would love to hear like some rationale from NDOT, or maybe just have something posted on the website that provides a reasoning for why the different zones have the limits that they have. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming and sharing. Pat Taylor. And if you state your name for the record, and remember you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
My name is James Patrick Taylor, and I am the owner of a company called Beck and Beck Resources. We do service work for restaurants and hospitality industry throughout the Nashville area, and we have recently had a little bit of an issue with parking and parking violations, specifically downtown. Historically, downtown, we were able to use loading zones to load and unload our products for our customers, and all of a sudden that rule has apparently changed without notice, and we have a $94 ticket to pay. Thank you. All right. We have a $94 ticket to pay, to show for it, but bigger than that, we have an issue with going forward trying to service our customers. It's, when this ticket was written, my employee was actively loading and unloading his vehicle in front of one of our customers, and the officer was writing him a ticket. And he discussed it with the officer and said, I'm here, I'm loading right now. And he says, yeah, but you've got 5 minutes to do it. 5 minutes is an unreasonable period of time. The job can't be done in 5 minutes. And it wasn't just my employee that was getting tickets. They were ticketing everybody on the street, Budweiser trucks and so forth. And it's impossible for us as an industry to get in and out of these places in 5 minutes time. And then making a rule change with no notice is quite unreasonable. And they were literally just blanking the street, writing tickets. And if this is what the rule is, I'd like for someone to tell us how we're supposed to do our job. There's not like there's a back door that we can go in or someplace else to load and unload. We have to do it on Broadway, and we have loading zones, and we use loading zones. And historically, as long as we got done by 10 o'clock, we were all good. This ticket was written at 9:19 a.m. The ticket he got before was at 9:25 a.m. We get on the street as early as 6 o'clock in the morning to meet our customers, and our customers literally have people come in early, hours before they open for business, just to receive orders from their vendors. And y'all cutting the vendors out. And I don't know how it's going to get fixed.
Yes, please.
On Broadway,
Yes, ma'am.
and it happened before 10 a.m.
Yes, ma'am, it did.
And when did it, what month, what week?
It was 2 weeks ago.
And had you done that, had you been able to load and unload the week before?
Yes, ma'am. But the week before that, we got a ticket also. So that's twice in 3 weeks we got a ticket before 10 a.m.
For being more than 5 minutes?
That's what the officer said the second time. The first time we weren't there. We were inside the building when we got the ticket. The second time, the gentleman was literally putting product on his two-wheeler to take it into a building, and the cop officer is actively writing the ticket. And he's trying to discuss it with him. The officer said, we're watching from over Bridgestone Arena, and when we see you here for more than 5 minutes, you're getting a ticket. We don't care.
Okay.
That's unreasonable. And again, forever, it's been up until 10 o'clock. We were following the rules. The rules as we knew them.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Yes, sir.
This is very helpful for us. Appreciate you coming down. Okay. The next name is it, can't tell, is it Yan? And if you would make sure you state your name for the record, please, sir. and you have 3 minutes.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yana Janahan, and one of the issues I wanted to talk about is a little bit related to the guy who spoke before me. I work for a parking company, and for the past, I'll say a month now, we've been getting tickets just because, and sometimes even on our driveway. So we have two issues there. The first issue that we have is when you have guests that pull up in front of the hotel, and it usually takes time to remove the cars. So sometimes we park after our driveway, after the valet signs there, and then we get ticketed. Even if it's like 5-10 minutes, we get ticketed. Last week, we got a ticket on our own driveway, and the guy who gave us the ticket said, we have 10 minutes to remove the cars. But it's not really realistic to us to remove the cars in 10 minutes because sometimes you have parking garages that are maybe a block or two from the hotel, and it's not very feasible to do that. Sometimes it takes you 15 minutes to go park a car and come back. That's the first issue I had. And the second one is we are a little bit confused as to where to post our signage, the valet sign, because we've been receiving notice from the NDOT about not being able to put our valet cone on the sidewalk. They want us to remove it. I called, and then when I called, I don't remember who I spoke with, but he wasn't too sure about what was going on there, and he told me he couldn't give me a straight answer, and he recommended that I come here today.
Could you tell us the name of your company and the address?
SP Plus.
SP Plus?
Yes.
And the addresses you're referring to or the location?
We have a couple of locations like 505 Church Street, the Dream Hotel. We also have the Moxie, the one on 3rd Avenue. And all of these locations, we've been ticketed at all of these locations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. The next name is it Justice Lang? Yes. Oh, okay, thank you. And then Samantha Bowie? Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone who took the time to come down. Appreciate your input very much.
Mr. Chair, one more comment.
Yes.
Going back to Ms. Williams' question, are we working on our availability with the parking system to be able to add time? I know we've talked about being able to extend time some places, but if you want to pull in somewhere 30 minutes early and pay the city money to park, is that something that we can design our communication to do so we can go ahead and park our cars?
So in this particular case, given that after 5 o'clock it becomes 3 hours, she could have fed for a half an hour for the 30 minutes, and then at 3 o'clock she could have gone it'll allow her to park up for a max of 3 hours after 5 o'clock, no matter what. So with her pulling in and just seeing that it changed from 2 hours to 3 hours, she could have still done it and then upgraded it or added time through her phone or through a text. So yes, ma'am, we did set that up. So there are the opportunities to use the app, the phone, a text to actually add additional time.
And do you know, Director, on the signs, this is all new, I know we're still working our way through this. Does it say that if you're here or you can contact to add more time?
So it does. It'll tell you also when you actually do the QR code or you do by text. And actually, if you actually list your number and your time is coming up and you have available time to purchase more, it'll send you a text saying, oh, by the way, your time's going to expire in 15 minutes. Do you want to add time? And it'll send you that notice as well. So it does provide opportunities for them to add more additional time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay. The next item is the approval of the consent agenda, and please note that items on the consent agenda will be approved at one time unless there's a request to remove an item. We have two items. Item 5.1 is an authorization for an all-way stop at Montrose Avenue and 10th Avenue South, requested by NDOT. And item 2 is mandatory referral 2022 M003AB001, a request for the abandonment of a portion of the Lock Road right-of-way and easement between maps 01-109-004800 and 07-113-000100, requested by Dell and Associates. Is there any request to remove these items for a separate discussion? Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor? Okay, these items have been approved. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we're going to do a slight change in the order because I think it's going to be a long discussion, and maybe while we're fresh, it would be better. But we're going to have Marty Sewell and come and make the presentation about Connect Downtown, which has been something before this commission for quite a long time, and
All right. Oh, good. I thought we couldn't.
all right,
excited.
if everybody would introduce themselves so that we all know who everyone is, please.
Yes, sir. I'm Marty Sewell with NDOT. I lead the long-range planning team, and I've got a couple of our consultant team members here with us that'll introduce themselves.
I'm Beth Ostrowski with KCI Technologies. We're the traffic engineer for Connect.
And I'm Jennifer Wieland with Nelson Nygaard. We've been leading the consultant team for Connect Downtown.
All right, and we're really excited to be at this point in the planning process. We have come to you several times over the last couple of years with updates, and you've seen our timeline stretch and stretch and stretch, and sometimes that has to happen in order to engage all of the various stakeholders and make sure that we get everyone on board before we get to this point where we're presenting the draft recommendations. So I'm excited to be able to talk about draft recommendations and how the community is going to be able to engage with that, the document and our draft plan over the next the next month or so and provide input. So I'll dive right in to it. Wanted to cover these main topics today. The process, just a quick look at the process. I think that's one slide or so, but we're going to talk about the modeling results that helped inform the recommendations, and then also the big move or projects that we're proposing. But more importantly, I think in terms of what your role is, we're going to talk about some of the different things that would have to come before you over the next several months or even years as we implement the plan. But as we talked about, those of you who've been, welcome, council member to the commission. Those of you who've heard part of this presentation before, as you're aware, this is the Downtown Comprehensive Transportation Plan that's intended to provide vision and identify recommendations to help us keep downtown moving, keep businesses open, and accommodate our growth. And so we've started off by identifying these 6 major issues that we needed to address with our solutions in this plan. People are stuck in traffic. The options don't match our desires in terms of having transit and more bikeways and that sort of thing. The transit opportunities are slow. Our transit system is not able to operate efficiently in downtown due to the congestion. And of course, as Nashville being popular, a place for events, places for everything that you can imagine to happen, all of that is creating its own set of issues. Then our loading space, as you always hear at your meetings in the public hearing, the issues associated with that. We've attempted to address that, as well as just addressing safety in general across downtown, for especially for our most vulnerable users. But as I mentioned, we've been at this for a while now. We're going on 2 years, and we are really excited to be on the right-hand side of this chart, and we mean it this time. Sorry to joke about that, but I know that our commissioners are in on the joke there. But we've gone through these various stages of the process and worked diligently in each stage to move forward and advance this process and advance our recommendations to this point. And this slide is just to give you an indication. I think I've probably shown you this one before, but we had engagement, we had technical review, technical analysis, and looked at our past work, past engagement, past plans, and then also looking at our proven solutions, the best practices across the country that have informed our recommendations. But before we moved it into recommendations, we had to test it. And so Beth is going to talk about how we tested that with our modeling.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do not intend to read you and talk to you about every box on this slide, but what's worth noting is we've been doing modeling for this project for over a year at this point. We started in the spring of 2022, and we have worked through an iterative and in-depth modeling process. We have run both models for system level assessments, and that was done in a software called PTV Vistro. And then we have done corridor level assessments specifically on the transit priority corridors in a software called PTV Vism that allows us to get microsimulation to a different degree than we can on the system level software. This modeling process helped us identify and support the roadway conversions. There's some one-way, two-way conversions, and shifting of the roadway priority, the priority of the space to transit priority corridors or to multimodal elements. So all of the recommendations that Marty will describe a little bit later have been vetted through the modeling process that we'll continue to talk about here. So with the modeling, we looked at 3 different scenarios, big bucket scenarios. Obviously, we start always by looking at existing. So that is, what is the geometry today? What is the volume today? It's worth noting that our today is March 2022 because we've been in this process for quite a while. Then after that, we look at a future no build scenario. So the laneage configuration stays the same, but we grow to a future volume 10 years out. Within the downtown area, we had multiple zones that had different growth rates, just like you might expect in downtown. Some areas have experienced different levels of growth than others over the last 10 years, and we expect the same over the next 10 years. And then finally, we have the future build, which has adjustments for the lane configurations and adjustments for the future volumes. So we actually had 2 different versions of the future volumes that had to do with a shift in mode of, different levels of achieved mode shift. So from single occupancy vehicles to transit riders to cyclists, things of that nature. And so we had a couple different iterations of that could be reflective of what, when we began this process, we didn't know what the outcomes would be. And so we wanted to have different levels to assess if we have a high achievement of shifting the modes that people use versus if we have a lower achievement of that. Oh, this one. And so what do we know? Quite simply, we have to do something. Doing nothing is not an option. I could give you 1,000 pages of analysis to look through, and we are producing that report, but really the story that needs to be told is we need to do something. The road space and the right-of-way is finite, and we achieve better results, and everything looks better even with the reduction of vehicular lanes in some locations when we achieve more mode shift. And so we need to put in the investment, and Marty will go through the recommendations that we have for that in order to achieve more mode shift. We really looked at this from a moving people's perspective, and we are able to move more people with these recommendations. And the last thing on this I'll say is there are some intersections that get a little teeny tiny bit worse, certainly. That is something that is real in our analysis. We didn't see anything catastrophic. With all of the recommendations here, there's nothing that we have found that was catastrophic and caused us pause to say we shouldn't be doing this. I'll give it back to you.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Beth. I know that gets a little above my head sometimes when you get into the weeds on the modeling, but we do have to test these recommendations and make sure they work. So we're glad to have Beth and KCI on our team. And I didn't mention earlier that, and I guess you mentioned Nelson Nygaard, but we have other companies that are part of this team as well. And also that reminding everyone that this is a partnership between TDOT, NDOT, and Metro, WeGo Public Transit, and the Nashville Downtown Partnership, all funding contributors to this study. All right. Now to the recommendations. So we'll go through each of these. They're organized in these 5 big moves. And for each of them, I want to point out, I think I've captured all of them, but I wanted to be able to point out with the little yellow stars the locations on the items that are most relevant to this commission, where we'll be coming back to you in some form or another to ask for approval or support. So first of all, the safety, improving safety. This would include everything from new capital projects, the leading pedestrian intervals on our signals in downtown, things such as no right on red, traffic safety enforcement, as well as bulb outs and other intersection daylighting, and of course, education programs. And some of these things we're already doing. As you know, an education programming with Vision Zero is in progress. But in terms of what we would bring back to you, some of the capital projects may require your attention, as well as bulb outs and intersection daylighting, where those might impact the capacity or the number of lanes and that sort of thing, or parking. And then also on the traffic safety enforcement side, there would be several different items that would probably come out of that you would need to see before we could advance them. In terms of managing congestion, we would start, of course, with the traffic management center that's underway right now, or being in operation to some degree, but will be expanded and continue to grow as we invest in the signal technology and the fiber that connects them. We would be looking for adaptive signals in downtown, throughout downtown. That's something we're already pursuing in terms of financial. The operational conversions, in other words, moving from two-way to one-way or one-way to two-way on the streets that you see listed there, 2nd, 3rd, part of 4th, and then a section of 7th as well. And I'll talk about those in terms of phasing a little bit later. And then also the additional enhancements that are listed there as well. And just pointing out that most of these would require some form of Traffic and Parking Commission interaction with NDOT for approval. In terms of moving more people, this is where we're looking at the transit facilities. And so this plan is recommending, in conjunction with the East Bank vision, that we build new transit centers or mobility centers, one of which would be in the Sobro area within our Connect Downtown study area, and then also the East Bank Mobility Center that is part of the East Bank plan that was finished last year. And so we also see the value in that and have incorporated all of that into the modeling of transit and all the recommendations so that they do match. But we would come back to the Traffic and Parking Commission again for the transit priority corridors. And just to remind you, the transit priority corridors would include dedicated lanes for buses to use. They could have safer stops, better enhancements at the stops to make it easier to get on and off. And then, of course, some safety improvements in terms of being able to walk around and walk to those locations. So those transit priority corridors would allow the buses to move much more efficiently. As you can see, it would route around, upon implementation, the busiest, most congested sections of our tourist area in downtown, or the tourist-focused areas, so that the transit can keep moving, and then it would not be impacted by a lot of the street closures and things of that nature that occur when we do have events. Let's see, what else? Am I missing something, Jennifer, that I should be pointing out?
A quick question on this. So, you're, just to be clear, you'd be talking about some dedicated bus lanes on
Yes, sir.
the streets identified in gray?
That's right.
Okay, all right.
And part of that, the last line there, or the last section, the additional transit priority would address 3rd and 4th Avenues in downtown, and that would be more of an interim first several years of implementation. That's something that can be done quickly with some queue jumps and some other improvements that would help the buses get through there. In the process, as we're developing the rest of the system, I'm leaving something out, I feel like.
I think the only note that I would add, Marty, is that when we talk about a transit priority corridor, sometimes people get a vision in their head of there being nothing else happening on that street except for transit. And that's not the case. Each of these would still have general purpose lanes. They'd have wide, generous sidewalks, space for parking and unloading as needed. And there are multiple routes using each of these transit priority corridors. So you have a bus coming every 1.5 to 3 minutes during the peak periods. So it is a lot more transit that is concentrated on a single corridor, but it's serving multiple uses still.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
All right. There was something else I had in my mind and it's just slipped me, so maybe it'll come back. In terms of moving more people on transit service too, this would be in addition to what Jennifer was speaking of, this would be adding routes or adding additional service, adding more frequency, and that would add a lot of transit riders to our system. And more frequent service, such as 24 hours a day, would really serve our downtown employees that work especially in the hospitality industry that are there late or they have to get there extremely early. So that would help that as well. Let's see. Go ahead.
And I think maybe the most important thing to note about all of these transit improvements is, yes, there are investments that are happening downtown, but especially when we talk about improved service, this is a regional benefit. These are trips that are serving the entire region, more hours of service, more frequent trips. And so that is a benefit that people across the region will realize and not just a downtown benefit.
All right, and then the next one we'll look at are the completing or creating complete networks, and this would address mobility lanes, or they would include we have bike lanes in downtown right now, but the idea would be to enhance some of those as well as build new ones that would be wider and have more space for things like scooters and whatever the next technology is that would need to fill that space that would not need to be in the lane with traffic and with cars and general purpose traffic. We would also be looking at implementing the planned greenway system. We're having worked with the Greenways Commission staff to ensure that our maps are correct, and we have all of those recommendations on here. So we would be looking to recommend to that the city would advance that as well, and the parks would get funding for that. Then key connections, things like the grade changes in the Gulch or other multimodal links that need to go from a lower level to the top, the bottom of the Gulch to the top for 11th Avenue, for example. Different opportunities to move up and down are needed very badly. And then this would, of course, the mobility lanes. You've heard these conversations before on some of our projects where we need to talk to you about the allocating the space on an existing street. And of course, when we develop those plans, each individual project, we would bring those to you at the time of implementation and ask for your approval or sign off or to gain your support and ask for whatever information you would need to do that. Okay, and then lastly, the maximizing the curb. And we've heard about this, some of the issues associated with this earlier, but we desperately need to be able to be more flexible in the way that we use the curbs, so that some spaces can be used for some uses in the morning and other uses in the afternoon, depending on whatever the context is for that particular loading area. We would be adding loading and delivery zones throughout downtown in spaces where they are not at this time, making it more convenient for businesses, making it more convenient for the delivery drivers and others who have to support and make sure that those products get to the businesses. We would also look at piloting a smart loading program. And I'll go ahead and click this too, because all of these would come to you. Part of that would also be and I should mention too, on the piloting smart loading program, we've talked to you about that in the past when we had the Cord pilot project several years ago. It would be in the same family as that, but that's kind of what we're talking about.
How did that program go? Because I remember having some discussions about it, and this, while you were talking, I was thinking, whatever happened to that program about kind of what I call loading smart was supposed to be?
It did close in terms of being a pilot, and of course it was interrupted by the pandemic, and that made the data a little less useful in the longer term, but it did at least get us into the spirit of trying to manage the curve, thinking more creatively, and looking for other opportunities with the advancement in technology, whether it's cameras or license plate readers, those sorts of things that could be used to help monitor not only the curb for loading, but for other uses, to parking and that sort of thing as well.
Chairman Green, I'll add one thing. So that previous system was an honor code based reservation system. So we had challenges with that. I will say that, but yes, it did come to an end, and the pandemic was one of those challenges as well.
Speakers today was obviously engaged in the loading business, and you just wonder availability that they would know when to be there, when not to be there. So.
And we would ensure this time around. I don't think that last time around we had the level of engagement with the businesses and deliveries. We would be stepping that up in this case to be more proactive and make sure that and not only us, but the company we work with would be responsible for doing that outreach, making sure that they're signed up and that sort of thing.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Part of this would also be inventorying our valet program that you guys you're responsible for approving. Part of that would be, is it really necessary, for example, for a restaurant that only needs the valet for 3 hours a day to take the whole space all day? Or maybe there's another use that could use that space when they're not using it. So that's what we mean by that. Expanding our curb enforcement, I hit on that a little bit earlier. That's not necessarily always popular, but once we have all of the tools in place, I think that it will overall balance things out and make things better. And then lastly, the developing strategies to address the future, the autonomous taxis and deliveries and other things that we'll be expecting in the coming years. Got these slides, the next couple here, just to give an indication of how the curb use might change. We've identified these particular ones that are shown in the various colors here on the map. And you can take a closer look at these after the fact today, and we'll be making available the document that'll be released after this meeting today to the public. It'll be online, and you'll have an opportunity to dive in and look at that really closely. But the point is to show here that these can change throughout the day, that you would also see the dots that are shown, the black dots, the taxi, ride share pickup, working with those companies to ensure that they're not crisscrossing across Broadway and that they're moving away from Broadway, and that they're picking up people and dropping people off in a manner that would facilitate those movements and reduce the congestion on Broadway. And finally, just bringing all of these things together in one picture, Brad's gonna pass around a 4-page executive summary that includes, I believe it's this image, so that you can take a closer look at that and have a takeaway from the meeting today, and maybe that will generate some thoughts or questions that you'll have for us after the fact. But of course, we'll be able to answer some of those today if you're able to ask those today. Let's see. All right, and then lastly, not last section, yeah, this is the last section, I think. But we're talking about how to get it done. Like, this would take place over the course of 10 years. There'll be more engagement as we get to each of these projects. We'll work with the community, with the stakeholders, business owners, to bring these to fruition. We'll work on the low-hanging fruit first and try to implement as much as we can. The mobility lanes are one place where we can start, and the curb management is another where we can get going quickly. And so we intend to be working towards those goals very soon, and already are in some cases. And just to recap, the different things that you would be seeing as part of your implementation role with this plan: the conversions, one-way and two-way conversions, the transit priority corridors, mobility lanes, the curb regulations and other types of, whether it's the flexible curb and the type of technology we use for that, and also in the review and recommendations for valet program. I've got slides here on the phases. I just could go through quickly just to give you an indication of what you'll see in the document. Yes, ma'am.
Where does pedestrian safety, that's what this commission is responsible for, so where does that fit in now and going forward?
Would you hit on that one? I know you'll knock that one.
So the big move that Marty mentioned around improving safety is what we see as just advancing the Vision Zero work that is already underway. And we have identified safety improvements and advancing Vision Zero projects as part of immediate action, because it is already underway, and really it's the kind of thing that just can't wait. So those are recommendations that we'd say move as much forward in the first phase as possible, and then as each project is designed moving forward, safety has to be the paramount consideration.
And my second question is, where does this fit in with the party buses and our entertainment industry as far as moving around and being safe, pedestrian safety and parking and life in general?
I'm going to look over at my deputy director here to chime in.
It actually does have an impact on that. We're presenting before the TLC on Thursday, so we're coming before them to share some of our observations early on in the study and some additional observations that we've done as part of the engineering analysis on what the congestion, how we address congestion in the downtown areas as it relates to those that you mentioned, those services.
I neglected to frame all of this as Vision Zero because that is the banner we operate under at NDOT, and we do forget sometimes to mention it, but that is built into each of these big moves, as Jennifer was alluding to.
Marty, I'll add some kind of the short term. So some of the slides you may have seen this. So as far as pedestrian safety, leading pedestrian intervals is part of the early deployments that we're going to be instituting as part of this. That's that opportunity where we give the pedestrians a first start, and everyone else will have a red ball, in the movement, so they can actually establish their presence in the intersection. In addition to that, we have other considerations when we talk about the multimodal lanes. We are expanding that in the process of multimodal lanes to having more accessibility for pedestrian movement as well.
Part of this discussion was a discussion that's come to you before in terms of Third Avenue. I didn't put the slides in here for that, but since we brought that, you have your own PTSD probably from some of those meetings. But we have, for the section that has been most difficult to deal with, not in terms, I don't mean the people, but there's just so much going on. The congestion, whether it's loading, unloading, and having all the pedestrians on the sidewalk. We are not proposing a mobility lane through that section of Third Avenue between Commerce and KVB. So we would like for those sidewalks to be wider there to accommodate the pedestrians in that space, make it safer for them. And then we would also recommend having loading on both sides of the street. It would become one way, and we would have loading on both sides of the street. So those businesses could take advantage of loading opportunities on both sides, and you get the one lane going north that would be able to move traffic and not be blocked. That would be the hope from there. I wanted to mention that since that has been an issue that comes up a lot or frequently with that project. But we'll find other ways, or we're finding other ways to make those mobility lane connections instead of that particular route.
Question, is it Nygaard? Is that your?
Nelson Nygaard is the firm.
Okay, so you're a consultant, so I assume you've seen other cities, and are there comparable models that have been done in other cities relative to Nashville? Because every city wants to think its issues are completely unique. They are unique, but similar. So are there any kind of peer cities you've seen that you could share, provide some insights?
Yeah, we did a lot of best practice and peer city research, and you're right, every city thinks they're unique. Nashville is a bit unique. Not only do you have such an incredible influx of visitors, so many events, but you actually have really narrow rights of way downtown, especially compared to a lot of your southern peers. So there are some special challenges. A couple of the cities that we really looked at in terms of most similarity to Nashville. So we looked at Austin, and we looked at the investments that Austin is making right now, both in a mobility lane system and in a transit system that can support the growth of that city. We've also looked closely at Atlanta to see some of the investments they're making. And then we've certainly looked across the country at investments in cities like Boston, in Seattle, in Las Vegas, in Denver. All of them are different than Nashville, but have some similarities. And what we have seen consistently is that Nashville is the only city of its size in the country that has no transit priority. There is not a single dedicated bus lane anywhere that we go operates, and you are alone in that regard. And so that, when we talk about moving more people, when we talk about a growing city, that is one of the investments that peer cities and other similar cities have been making with great effect.
It looked, based on the charting of usage, there was a lot of loading zone usage throughout the day, just not early in the morning or late at night, but it looked pretty consistent. Can you comment about that? Because that does present issues, obviously, for moving traffic.
Yeah, and as we focused on a couple of things, so we spent some time out in the field with folks making deliveries at 5 a.m. We met with distributors, we've talked with hospitality industry folks, and really tried to understand how much of the day the curb is used for goods delivery, for service vehicles, and then when it transitions to passenger loading and unloading. And we do feel really strongly that prioritizing the core of downtown for loading and service activity until about 4 p.m. is what is actually needed. The big delivery trucks try and get in as early in the day as possible, but some of the smaller delivery trucks are really working up until about 3 or 4 p.m. in many cases to get things offloaded and get the businesses set up for the evening rush. So that is part of the reason that we maintained that focus later in the day than we would have expected as we got started.
Mr. Sewell, is Is this the first time the city's collected this level of data about the activity downtown? Or is there any comparison to any other studies?
I'll remember to turn this on. We believe this is, in terms of engagement especially, that this would be the most engagement that we've ever had in terms of stakeholders and residents and businesses in downtown for a comprehensive downtown plan, especially focused on transportation. There may have been some efforts with the community plan that Drew, that I'm not familiar with, but Beth has worked on different projects in downtown and can probably speak to that just as well.
Yeah, there definitely are projects that fed to the creation of this project, including the downtown mobility study that wrapped in 2018, I believe, and went on for many years before that. But in terms of engagement, absolutely, this is the highest amount of engagement. And I don't know that any of the previous efforts that were this in-depth or close to this in-depth ever reached the finish line.
Question then becomes is, say, let's just use this becomes our data point base. So when we get out into the future, 3 years, 5 years from now, what are going to be the metrics for evaluating success, failure of what we've done and how to tweak it?
We've really invested in our analytics in general and data collection, and I think that will continue to happen, and we'll be monitoring safety data, we'll be monitoring the traffic data and the way that that's invested in, and Brad can probably speak more to that than I can on the traffic side.
Yeah, so one of the key things we're going to be looking at is the reliability of the transportation system. So the daily variation, that's something that people get the most frustrated around. Is one day it takes you an hour, one day it takes you 30 minutes, to get out of downtown. So that daily variation we can measure now, and we'll be looking at programming that as one of our key metrics.
We want to take advantage of all the data opportunities that we have now. We've really focused on trying to find those different types of sources, whether it's safety data, working with hospitals and that sort of thing, or just working with our traffic signals data.
I had a question.
Yeah.
If you could move forward to the slide with the scooter to kind of piggyback off of Commissioner Wood's question and Chairman Green, other cities, how have they implemented scooter traffic and scooter use? And, is this related to pedestrian safety? Are they going to be flowing with pedestrians as with anybody else? Or how are you all planning to address that? And the photo, it was just a slide with the person with a scooter on it.
With a person on a scooter.
Yeah.
So part of the reason that we have put focus on mobility lanes in particular, as opposed to just bike lanes, is providing that a little bit of additional space to make those lanes work for people on scooters, on electric bicycles, and faster moving. I don't want to call them vehicles, but faster moving things as well. And the key there in terms of safety is a couple of things. So when we give people separated, dedicated facilities, it improves safety for everybody. It improves safety for people driving, it improves safety for people on the sidewalks who are walking or using wheelchairs, and it improves safety for people biking and scooting. So that is why there is such a focus on creating that complete and connected network of mobility lanes. And, so much of what we see today in terms of pedestrian safety is that scooters are sometimes left on the sidewalks, or people are trying to ride a scooter on the sidewalk and somebody's trying to walk and the scooters are going fast and all the things are happening in the same space. And so by giving each mode and each mode traveling at a different speed its own space, that's the easiest way that we can improve safety for people. And we have been seeing other cities do that across the country. Mobility lanes are a newer approach that is starting to be used in places with a lot of bike and scooter traffic, but it is starting to make a difference in terms of safety.
So in more congested areas, i.e. Broadway, 12 South, West End, is there, there's a restriction already in place. Are we looking to change that to allow scooters, and or can they be limited to, once you get to Broadway, I don't know, you need to scooter to go from Second to Bridgestone, right? Or,
Right.
You know, what does that look like?
I think that what Nashville has done in terms of working with the scooter companies and really trying to restrict where scooters are and how quickly scooters are moving in some places makes an incredible amount of sense and is consistent with what we see in other cities that have very high scooter usage as well. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend moving away from that. I think when the mobility lanes network comes into play, you can reevaluate and understand whether people are using those facilities differently and if that's improving safety. But I wouldn't automatically say that you need to change those restrictions.
The mobility lanes, like Seventh, for example, is shown on here as going one way. The mobility lanes, are those two lanes? As somebody who rides my bike downtown a lot, I will tell you Seventh is the only way that I know of to get across downtown safely in that direction. And the ability to go both directions there, I think, is important. Are mobility lanes generally dual directional?
It depends a little bit on the corridor that we're talking about. So part of the reason that we want to convert Seventh to one-way southbound for vehicle traffic is to provide a two-way mobility lane on one side of the street and have the opportunity to increase some loading and pickup space there. On some other streets, so Third North and Second North, for example, that's envisioned as a one-way mobility lane on each of those streets, so it forms a couplet. But most of the others, we'd be talking about a north-south or an east-west mobility lane on the same corridor. So.
All right. You got to wrap up here? Okay. We don't want to take away your thunder.
I don't know why I can't remember the microphone without help, but thank you I'm glad you're sitting by me. Just as highlighting here the engagement that's to come, we'll have some open house meetings this week. We'll continue working with stakeholders now through the end or through Christmas time, closing our online public outreach around that same time, and then we'll start compiling the final document, and then we'll get to work on implementation. Again, on the key stakeholders, this is a sampling of the types of folks that we're going to go back out to, people we've already been talking with a good bit and engaging. We'll continue to do that and make sure that they understand the recommendations moving forward. And again, the schedules. So just to remind us that we are very close to the end here and looking forward to being able to come to you with actual projects to implement.
Marty, can you go back to the slide before where you were showing the engagement events? I believe there's a QR code on there. So that's this week. So an important week of engagement this week in the draft recommendations.
And thanks for pointing that out. And the website there is on the screen too for anyone watching at home, and the QR code. You can get to the project website, and I don't know if it's not quite 4:30. I believe it's 4:30 whenever IT is going to have the draft plan posted.
So coming to a Christmas party near you, connect downtown.
That's right.
Okay.
I haven't thought of it that way, but yeah.
Okay. All right. So, thank you, Mr. Sewell. I know there's been a lot of welling and gnashing of teeth to get to this point, and it's good to feel like we're getting somewhere. We've collected, it's the most data that I've seen in my years on the commission about what's going on downtown. And so thank you. Any other comments, commissioners? All right. Thank you. Okay. Back to the regular agenda. Item 6.1 is a revocation of an existing valet lane at 223 Representative John Lewis Way, Woolworth Theater, and authorization for new pay parking from 10 a.m. to 7 a.m., 7 days a week, requested by NDOT.
Chairman, we have Marcus and Brandon with our parking program here to answer questions.
Just make sure you state your name for the record so everybody knows who you are. Thank you.
Marcus Jackson, Transportation Superintendent.
Brandon Boatman, General Manager. So here you're looking at the Woolworth Theater on Rep. John Lewis Way. It's on the west side of the road, right across the street from Walgreens. And previously, they did have a valet operation operating there, but they haven't been in some time. So what we're asking for is to transition this space over to paid parking. The whole street is paid parking on the west side of the street, and we would like to have paid parking outside of the loading zone hours. Currently, it's loading zone from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m., and then we would have paid parking from 10 a.m. to 7 a.m. And the staff recommendations to move forward with that.
Any questions? Motion to approve?
Move to approve.
We have a first. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay. All right, y'all might as well stay. You're on the agenda next. Okay, item 6.2 is approval to remove existing passenger loading zones at 160 2nd Avenue South, Four Seasons Hotels, 30 feet north of the Memoriam, and authorization for a new 50-foot valet lane at this location that would be effective 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week, with a passenger loading zone during all other times requested by NDOT. Okay, you may proceed.
Yes, sir. So this location right here on the east side of 2nd Ave South, yes, the request would be for a valet lane to be installed there where the current passenger loading zone is. It'll be operating under the Four Seasons Hotel. We've done our due diligence there and see that there is a good cause to have a valet set up there. We've done our safety analysis as well and think that it's a good proposal to present to the traffic and parking and to move forward with for the valet operation there.
Questions?
Yeah, so I guess at KVB on down it's busy right there at that intersection already. Could you just talk to, you did your analysis, you reviewed it, what the justification and some reasoning behind. I know in front of the hotel, you can pull in and park and valet and do what you need there. So, I just envision pile ups at that intersection, increase and stopped in traffic. So just further explanation would be great.
Diana Allerhone, Director over the Department of Transportation Multimodal Infrastructure, known as NDOT. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Actually, this is going to be for the residents of the Four Seasons, not actually for the hotel. So you're not going to have as large of a volume. Right now, they have no way of getting their groceries up or anything, so they would pull in, get some assistance, be able to get their groceries out, and then take that inside, and then the car would be parked for them. So when we actually looked at the number of residents that live there and the amount of need, we're not going to have the same issues as what you would find as the front pull-in. If they use the front valet to pull in and have them do it, they still have to walk out and all the way around based on the design of the building. So we did look at this to see if this would actually create a backup of right there at the Memoriam 2nd, and it would not, given the number of the fact that it's serving just the residents. So it's not meant to serve the hotel. This is strictly serving the residents of the Four Seasons.
How many residents are there?
So they are, I believe it's around 140, and it's not that full right now at the moment. So I would say they're probably at 30% occupancy, and that's typically what they've been averaging.
And they're asking for, how many places does that make? I know we've got 50.
If it's 50 feet, which is, every space is roughly around 24 feet, so it's about two spaces.
And it's a lot of questions. How close is that to the corner?
I want to say, we were requiring at least a 30-foot setback, so they have to be at least 30 feet in, because that's just the standard requirement from a safety aspect. So 20 feet to 30 feet in from the intersection is what we would be requiring before they would actually be able to set up their 2 valet spaces. So there is setback requirements that were met to make sure that we were following all safety aspects. And I'm sorry, it's 20 feet, not 30 feet, excuse me, when you're pulling away from a traffic signal.
You're right. You're right. It is 30.
It is 30 feet?
You're right,
I see,
first
the
time.
team even took better caution than what the MUTCD requires, so
And it
that's
has been-
awesome.
And it has been measured to correspond.
That's awesome.
Is it where that red truck is that like a loading zone already?
It's right now, yes, it acts as a loading, unloading zone in the current moment, so this would just be allowing them to also do valet.
And so how long can the loading zone, how long can that be a loading zone? If you're loading and unloading currently now, how long can you do that? Do you have an hour, 5 minutes?
30 minutes is the maximum, but that's going to change with Connect Downtown, so don't hold me to it, please. Because we're looking at adjusting the curb based on the actual need and all the analysis and study we did, but typically right now when you have an unloading zone, it's 30 minutes. But the intent is not for a car to sit there for 30 minutes. They're to flip and turn that and not allow for it to be built up. One of the other requirements, just real quick, of the Four Season is that they cannot use that as a loading unloading zone. They actually have to push all of their folks into their dock. So they actually it works out better, because we were having problems where people were just lining up and not doing anything and sitting there. And when we said, okay, we'll consider it, and then we started looking at it, they started putting a person out there that was actually managing it and forcing everyone to actually use the appropriate space that they're supposed to, such as the unloading dock or an area where they would actually have loading and unloading on property. So it's actually improved how the traffic flow has happened there, because before we were having some buildup issues. But now that it's kind of manned, and that was one of the things that they agreed to do as well, is to have it manned even before they have permission to start using it for valet. And they have been doing that, and it's been working so much better.
Last question, and I know this is hindsight, and nothing you all can control, but I don't understand why you would build a residence and not incorporate something. I mean, you know, in a
Yes.
perfect world, I guess we would do that, but
Well,
what are they doing now?
I think, I will tell you now, when someone's coming through and they're looking to do a development such as what the Four Season, where it is a hotel, a residence, and a meeting room and all of that, we're requiring that they're building all of that on property. In the past, there was a practice that a lot of developers used the right-of-way. And we just moved forward now where we're saying you cannot use the right-of-way. Because what it has done, as was shared in Connect Downtown, is it squeezed our right-of-way to where we have narrow spaces. And it's very hard to get a lot of traffic volume moving when you have a limited amount of right-of-way. So we are now forcing a new development for all of that to be managed on private property, not within the city right-of-way. So that's one of the big changes we've made over the past year and a half.
And
This was before my time.
That's what I totally understand, but what are they doing now? I mean, is there something internally that they're using now?
They are actually pulling into the garage and the resident garage, and the guys are helping them and taking the groceries. They have to park their car, they come downstairs and get their groceries, and then they go back up to their room. So there's an extra step that's in there, a couple extra steps that are in place. So that this is a way to try to make it a little bit more convenient for the residents than what they've had in practice in the past.
Commissioner, Four Seasons is here today, and they could speak on their current operations if you would like to ask them questions.
I mean, I think Diane, that you answered, a lot of my questions.
Do you have
I'm just
anything you wanna add?
curious.
You got,
So, quick question, it made me think this question should have been asked with Connect Downtown when they were here, but are those recommendations going to be incorporated into planning department, with the planning department, and future recommendations for downtown?
Yes,
So
sir.
that we can try to
Most definitely.
plan for a better outcome?
We actually have those conversations pretty regularly with planning today. So they're very much aware, and we work pretty much hand in hand with them as far as what that at the ground level is going to look like, how the pedestrians are moving, the bicycles, you name it. So we are already having those conversations, have been for quite a while.
Yeah, and you are correct. I've seen where basically people have come and said, oh, yeah, we're just going to use the street for our building.
Yeah, and we say no now. Or we push back and we're saying, I'm sorry, if you want valet parking, you need to figure out how to do it on property. You cannot use the city right away anymore.
All right, and you're going to speak, please, sir.
Yes, thank you so much. Brian Drab, Four Seasons Hotel and Private Residences here in Nashville. Here to answer any questions about the operation currently or what we're looking to do.
Yeah, could you just talk more about your operations? I mean, what I envision, the hotel and the residence are separate, and I guess
sir.
the goal here is people pulling up in the front, which already takes majority of that street, can pull up there and do what they need to do for the hotel, and then you're asking for something separate for the residents, or just clarify what that looks like. It's just, you've got other multi-use buildings in the area that we don't want to set a precedence that, a tri-brand hotel or somebody like that will come and request the same thing if it's appropriate, but if we could better understand that, it'd be great.
Absolutely, Commissioner. The hotel and residences, even though they are managed both by Four Seasons, they are separate entities. So the hotel valet is not an area for the residents to park their cars. As she mentioned, currently owners have to pull into the public parking garage, go up and park their car. Somebody will then have to go up, find them, help them with their luggage, their groceries, what have you, come back downstairs and go up the other elevators, go back up to their units. So it's not really the most convenient for our owners, and they would really love an area that they could just come, drop off their car, drop off their luggage, their groceries as they're returning home, and then have the car parked for them so they can come right through their lobby. We don't intend this for an outbound. Owners would still need to get their car inside the garage to help, reduce the traffic flow. Also, it takes the valets 15 minutes sometimes to go around Broadway. So this would help, with just the inbound traffic only. Again, we're just looking to have the valet operations there from a certain time, starting at 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. during the week. The rest of the time, it's a loading zone.
I guess my only concern is just the backup right there at the corner. It sounds like they're loading and unloading as well. I just don't want to create a habit to where, we're creating a valet zone for somebody to come and pull up. I hear that it's agreed that somebody's manning the operations there to help the flow and the time of what's happening, but, maybe some allotted time slots for people so that, you don't have, 4 people show up at once to where it's backed up or whatnot. And I may be overthinking it here. I spent a lot of time down there in that corner and worked actually in the Sobro building and know what goes on down there at those times and especially in the morning. So I just don't want to I want to make sure we're not over congested.
We can definitely be monitoring this and come back with any problems or considerations in the next, I would say 90 days, but I would actually recommend 120 because we're going into the holidays. And then if we feel that it is, and the board feels that it is not moving in the right direction, we can then actually revoke it. So you do have that authority.
Yes, council member.
Thank you. I just want to make sure too, I understand. I'm trying to blow it up on my phone and I don't have like a magnifying glass. So, but on the
Corby, can you pull up a Google, excuse me. Corby, can you try to pull up a Google Earth view or something like that?
Yeah.
162nd Avenue South.
And I'm looking at where I think it is on this Connect Downtown draft plan. And it doesn't show any parking or loading or meters on Second on that block. And so I just want to see, was any consideration given to whether this is consistent with the Connect Downtown recommendations?
We did run it through the Connect Downtown team before we actually pursued moving this forward, and they were comfortable with this request and ask. And again, I like the idea of doing it on a trial so that if it is not working out, we can bring it back. But, one of the recommendations out of Connect Downtown was to look at making Second a two-way street. So we wanted to make sure that we weren't creating a bigger problem if it was to become a two-way street, which it would not. We were not uncomfortable with bringing this suggestion forward to the board for consideration at this time. But we certainly can do a 120-day pilot and then bring it back. I'm very comfortable with that.
All right.
That's not it.
It's on Second Avenue.
That's First Avenue, you have Second
Yeah,
Avenue,
there you
and then
go.
go down a little bit,
Right there, over to the right there.
down,
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
where you can see those cars parked out kind of by the trees on the bottom of the image currently, bottom right-hand side. Yep.
Go south,
Other way.
Yep, right there.
Right there.
Right there where the truck is parked. That's been our biggest problem, is the truck's been parking there and then that's backing up the traffic. And now that they have a person out there, they're actually not allowing them. They're making sure that no one is stopping and creating that problem, that they're actually pulling over into the loading and loading zone area. So we felt comfortable with this. Thank you.
So I guess there's a few suggestions here. One, can we amend the recommendation or with a motion, or when we make the motion that, they're gonna man that area as proactively as possible. You're pushing the loading and unloading zone for commercial vehicles to the dock area, correct? And that, this would be on a trial period for 120 days, as Ms. Alacron suggested, and we'll bring it back and review it, based on, the success.
March. Yeah.
Is that March? God bless.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that your motion, sir?
Well, I mean, it could be if I need to formalize it or.
I think a motion might be to formalize that as a 120-day trial.
So I make a motion that we, or the Four Seasons, proactively has somebody out there monitoring the corner, push the loading and unloading zone to the dock, and that this be a temporary motion to approve with a 120-day review, that they come back to this commission and NDOT provides the situation or what has transpired over the last 120 days.
Okay. I think we have a motion. Is there a second to this motion?
Second.
We have a second. Okay. Any further discussion of that motion? All right. All in favor? Okay. Any opposed?
Oppose.
Opposed, okay. Okay. It is passed. Thank you. Next item is authorization to relocate existing loading zone on the north side of Terrace Place, east of 21st Avenue South, to the south side of Terrace Place, near the same location requested by NDOT.
It's actually, as you can see on this slide, it's right there. It's a lot more room. For safety reasons, it would keep the oncoming traffic from going into the opposite lane while still accommodating a loading area for those that need to unload.
All right. Would the crosswalk be improved so people can cross safely?
I believe there is a crosswalk there. We probably need to refurbish it more
Okay.
so than anything, sir.
Yeah, you can see the fringes of it right there, Chair. But yeah, it does look like it needs to be
A little faded.
yeah.
Okay. Any questions, comments from commissioners? Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
We have a first. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay. All right, and just make sure we get the crosswalk improved, please. Okay. 6.4, revocation of unused valet lane at 2201 Murphy Avenue and replacement with no parking anytime on the south side of Murphy Avenue, west of 22nd Avenue North, requested by NDOT.
Yes, sir. So this is over here by the hospital over here in Midtown. The current valet operator has not been paying for the space there.
Okay.
Therefore, we are looking to revoke the valet lane and turn it into no parking. There is a crosswalk also behind the smaller vehicle, which I would say is on the further west side of the road there. So just create overall better safety and better visuals for people coming in and out of that hospital.
Okay. Any comments?
I have a quick question. Just those cars in the background, is that where the valet operator has not been operating, or what's?
In that lane where the three vehicles are, that's where they have not. It's designed it's labeled a valet lane, but it's currently not being paid for. So we're looking to revoke it and then transition it over to no parking.
So where that red car is, that's just drop off?
Red car.
Is that a red car? Yeah.
inside their
Oh,
That's their driveway.
Yeah, that's the drive lane. We're just
Right,
talking
that's
about on the
private
street.
property there.
Okay.
Sorry.
Any further discussion of this item? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
We have a first. Is there a second? We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Next item, 6.5 is the reauthorization for 29 pay parking spaces on 2305 West End Avenue requested by Vanderbilt.
Yes, prior to the construction of that new facility, it was paid parking there, so we would just be putting the e-commerce signs and meters back in place where they currently existed prior to.
And also with that, Vanderbilt is also looking for better use and turnover of those spaces there, as they are seeing that people are staying there for hours upon hours, even overnight. So at this point, they would love to see the turnover to better support their students there and also the business across the street.
There used to be paid parking in that area as well.
Correct.
Okay. Yes, Councilman.
This along West End here, I mean, there's a lot of paid parking up and down West End. I know that West End has always been looked at as a likely mobility corridor with potentially dedicated bus lanes, better pedestrian and bike infrastructure. Was WeGo consulted before we pay to put parking meters in? I think it's worth making sure that we know that this isn't going to be used anytime soon for a mobility corridor.
Yes, we actually have regular conversations with WeGo and discussions about where we're looking to put the mobility corridors today. And so there is plans down the line for West End. There was actually at one time a try and an opportunity, and it was not successful, but it doesn't take it off the table for a future opportunity. But this is not a corridor at this moment that we are looking to actually do a transit-only priority, but there are other ones that we have regular conversations with them on. And that doesn't mean, because we would have parking today, doesn't mean we wouldn't be able to remove it and make it something else later on.
Okay, that was going to be my next
Yeah.
question. If we put it in, can we easily move
Yes.
it somewhere else?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any further questions? Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
We have a first. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It is passed. Next item, 6.6, authorization for a new valet lane at 2 Lee Avenue, effective 10:30 a.m. to 11 p.m., 7 days a week, requested by A Plus Parking Services, LLC, on behalf of Harper's Steakhouse.
Yes, sir. So over here, as you can see, when this building was created and developed, the developers did create a cutout for the valet operation. So it was a part of their design here. They can fit about 2 to 3 vehicles, depending on the size there. And their valet operation would consist of from 10:30 a.m. to 11 p.m. 7 days a week. And it'll be our recommendation to move forward with it.
Any questions? Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve?
We have a first. Is there a second? Second. We have a first and a second. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? It is passed. Next item. 6.7, authorization for new loading zone hours from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday to a 24/7 loading zone hours on the east side of 3rd Avenue South from the pedestrian bridge to Demumbrian Street, requested by NDOT.
Yes, sir. So over here on 3rd Avenue between Broadway and Demumbrian on the east side of the road, it's currently a loading zone from 7 to 6 p.m. We would like to convert it over to a 24/7 loading zone because outside of the 7 to 6 p.m., you do have people parking there, and it does create a lot of congestions and unease of traffic when going up and down 3rd Avenue, especially during the latter part of the day, and as there wouldn't be many, commercial loading and unloading during that hours, it would help also facilitate passenger loading and unloading outside of those throughout the entire day. And we would definitely recommend to move forward and approve that.
Also, the Pinnacle Garage is there, and that's a very large garage. And so in the evenings, if we have events that are going on, trying to get that garage actually vacated out onto 3rd, especially if cars are parked there, has turned out to be extremely difficult. At one time, we had come to y'all and asked you to consider allowing us to put parking. But as we've dug in deeper and been having further conversation between the police, Pinnacle, the Symphony, as well as also the Predators, we recognize we have to do a little bit more here just to be able to get people out of the garage and out of downtown. So our recommendation is that just be no parking, so it acts more as a travel lane than it does as a loading and unloading. So we would actually want to look at peak times, using that more as a travel lane, and the only way we can do that is to make it an unloading zone 24/7. Thank you.
Any questions?
Is there a time, so are people actually going to be loading and unloading there?
So
I know what the goal
Yeah.
is, which I appreciate, but
So we will be moving forward with some changes and recommendations as part of Connect Downtown. But right now, we really want it to act more as a travel lane. We can scoot people over and get them into the regular travel lane, but it just creates so much congestion with the amount of cars that are trying to come out of the garage. So, and with the Symphony there, we really, even late in the hours, it's just much better. I mean, about the only time it's not crazy is on maybe a Monday and Tuesday, unless there is something going on in the downtown core, then it's just a ton of work for us. So yes, it's pretty much all hours of the day and night.
so, but if it's loading and unloading, help me here,
30 minutes is the max. Our problem is
Okay.
cars are staying there forever, and now we're not able to use it. And then at night, I'm sorry, I totally missed your question, you're right. And then at night, when the police are down there, they actually physically will not allow them to even use it for loading and loading. It becomes a lane that they would be able to use to move traffic. Because we have police presence down here to try to help with moving the traffic in multiple ways.
Will people be able to drop off people there, or is that considered loading, unloading?
Yeah, that's considered loading and unloading, so we just pretty much push people forward.
Okay.
But again, as we move forward and Connect Downtown, there are going to be designated areas where, for example, rideshare will go, and that's the only place rideshare will go. There'll be designated places for the goods and materials to be dropped off. There'll be designated places for service vehicles to go. So as we move forward, we'll have better definition and defined spaces and times in the downtown core. And that's going to be more stuff we'll be bringing back before this board for consideration, because y'all have to designate those times, those locations, and everything with us. But at this moment, with the challenges that we're having, the police and us, and also visiting with, again, the Predators, Pinnacle, and the Symphony, if we could just make it no parking 24/7, it allows it to act in another capacity of a through lane, don't I wish, lane.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
We have a first. Is there a second? We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
I said no parking.
Any opposed? Okay, it is passed. All right. Next item is the authorization to convert one space from pay parking to a new loading zone effective 24/7 on the south side of Belcourt Avenue at 2111 Belcourt Avenue, requested by AB Hillsborough Village.
Mr. Chair, I need to recuse myself,
Okay.
please.
Thank you for letting us know. All right, staff?
Yes, sir. So over here in Hillsborough Village, over on Belcourt Avenue, between 21st and 24th Avenue South, we were looking to better assist the AB, the ANSI Blue, with their loading and unloading zone, loading challenges, as well as the theater. Currently, they do not have a loading dock. We've even went to the rear side of that building, and there is no access point to get to their building. So in consideration of their needs, we're looking to transition from one parking space that is paid parking to a 24/7 loading zone for them and everyone else on that road, especially for this building set right here.
Any comments, questions? Yes, council member.
Did anybody consult Vanderbilt Medical or Health about whether or not, I'm just mindful that this is a walk-in clinic and that parking is often used for patients. They have parking below, it's sort of confusing, but given that it's right in front of the walk-in clinic, were they consulted at all about taking away this parking spot right in front of there?
So there was, yes, they have been. So the organization as a whole and all that complex have actually been, we've been working with them because there's been multiple requests of how to make the parking work more suitable for all of the business needs. And this was not an issue that came up about closing it down. Again, if it does become one, we can always take it back, but they have the need pretty much there because of the business pull-up, the time and all of that, passenger unloading and loading will be allowed from it as well. So it was deemed and looked at as the community as a whole of the merchants in that building as a good fit. And that's why we brought it forward at their request.
And why was 24/7 deemed necessary?
Because there is also a music venue around there, and they have a lot of different times that the music venue comes, and they have to load and unload for the music venue. So it was accommodating, again, all the merchants, not just one particular one.
Is there a motion to approve? We have a first. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any further question, discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? And she recused herself. Please note that. All right. And then 6.9 is a request for approval of the Downtown Nashville Partnership Contract for managing the garages, requested by NDOT.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Darlene is passing out an update to the amendment. This is our third amendment with the Downtown Partnership for the management of the courthouse and library garage. We have been working with Downtown on the amendment. It's pretty much very much what you see in here, just a few tweaking, wordsmithing and stuff like that throughout, but we are looking for this. We'll also be taking it forward after approval of the board's approval to council for approval, and so that we can keep this in good shape with them. So thank you. And I believe Mr. Turner's here if there's any questions you might have for him. But he's not allowed to talk. He has to do what I say. Just kidding.
I like that.
Just having a little fun. But yes, we are asking for approval of the amendment pretty much in the state in which it is presented to you at this time.
Question.
Yes.
I guess what caught my eye when I was reading this before the meeting was down here where it says, I guess item 4, where section 1.11 was deleted and replaced with the following, about surplus revenue being maintained. Can you just explain briefly what happens to the revenue from these parking agreements?
Yes.
So that we have a couple of new members, and I
Yes,
think
sir.
it's always good to maybe revisit this to make sure we're all clear.
So as of right now, the net income, or the net revenue is what it's referred to in the contract, is actually split 50-50. 50% of it goes toward Metro for us to use for infrastructure improvements. And another 50% went into a bucket that Downtown Partnership could actually use for their needs. The only thing we did different in this one, based on Tom and I's conversation, is structured it to say that those dollars will be used for either improvements in the garage or improvements in the downtown area, instead of it being a little bit loose. So now we've just defined a little bit more about what the dollars can be spent on. But that's to help us with the improvements. Tom does a lot of work for or I shouldn't say Tom, but I have seen him out there with the broom. But Tom's team actually does a tremendous amount of work for us, on our side, stuff that NDOT would, I say Tom maintains downtown the Walt Disney style. And not to say that NDOT wouldn't, but he has the manpower and the ability, and that's part of what this partnership is about, and that's why it's really essential. So we're just looking to be able to better define how those dollars get spent, instead of it just leaving it open-ended.
Does the Downtown Partnership, do they manage 2 garages?
They manage the library garage and the courthouse garage on behalf of us.
All right, thank you. Mr. Turner, welcome, as always. It's good to see you again. Okay, yes?
How's how are things with the library garage? I know you've had some issues. How's that going?
I can speak to that.
Yeah, I'm going to let Brad speak to that. He can
Thank you,
give you an
Brad.
update with it.
So we are now moving forward with our remediation. There's a retrofit solution that we're using. We're not going to have to close any more of the spaces while we do so. So as you know, it's the upper 2 floors. So we're about right now around 70% capacity on the existing garage. So we don't anticipate actually having to. The work is going to be done by an on-call contractor that we currently have on call for this type of emergency repair work. So we are moving forward with finalizing the design, and hopefully over winter we'll be moving forward with the construction.
Move to approve.
Second. We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Please pass.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, the next item we have 2 unfinished business items. Item 7.1 is authorization for a new traffic signal at Dickerson Pike and White Street Pike requested by NDOT.
Yes, Chair Green.
Sorry, I guess my mic was off. Let me try again.
Go ahead.
Authorization for a new traffic signal at Dickerson Pike and White Creek Pike requested by NDOT. Mr. Freeze.
Yes, Chairman. So we actually brought this once before in the last time, and we actually requested a deferment because we had not done the warrant analysis. We have since that time done the warrant analysis and found that this does warrant a signal. Previously, we were working with Metropolitan and the Community Housing Infrastructure Program. They were going to install enhanced pedestrian crossing at this location. We determined because of the safety numbers in our analysis that a full traffic signal would be better situation for this location. So that's why we wanted to come before you. We actually did the analysis and we found that it is warranted. We do recognize the fact that there are additional signals in close proximity to this, and they will all have to be coordinated, so we're not doing anything detrimental to congestion along that, but we feel we have enough information now to move forward and actually finalize design for the traffic signal.
Thank you very much.
So are we going to have the good pedestrian walkway and sign, walk, don't walk, and perhaps even those flags I'm so crazy about.
That is
someday to on that new site.
That is correct. If you flip over to page 14 on the staff analysis, you can see the layout that we have proposed there. You can see that they're going to add the addition of a refuge island. They're crossing over Whites Creek Pike and then actually bulb out there to actually provide more safety for the pedestrians and restricting vehicle movement through that location.
Oh,
Thank
there's improvements to the street besides just the
Absolutely.
installing a light.
That is correct.
It's
Yes,
a-
sir.
It's a little more comprehensive, I guess we'd like to say. Okay. Is any other comments? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any further questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. I know the council member will be happy about this. We discussed this at Mr. Turner's big luncheon, and when I ran into him there. Okay. Item 7.2, authorization for truck restriction on no trucks over 16,000 pounds on Battle Road from Burkett Road to the Williamson County line requested by NDOT. I think we
Yes.
deferred this item because there is
Yes.
a legal question.
There was a question about access to that, for deliveries along Battle Road there, just when we restrict truck movement. So we did check back, legal did their review. There is a provision that allows them to deliver through truck any deliveries that are needed along that road. Based on our previous analysis, just to reiterate this, it's a rural winding road, 10-foot lanes, very problematic when it comes. You can see some of these curves here. You can see some of the washout in actually from trucks going along who are wider than 10 foot out there where they're actually taking that curve and washing out the road. We're having a lot of maintenance issues with this along Battle Road. So we have done the analysis and coordinated with Metro Legal. So we're ready to move forward.
Any comments from commissioners? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Second. We have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it is passed. Thank you. All right. The next item is a new policy for valet stands in the public right-of-way. And the purpose is to ensure valet operating in the right-of-way across Davidson County effectively display vital information for customers. Valet stands in the right-of-way must display the following: the location name, hours of operation, cost of service, name of valet company, local contact number for the valet company, and valet stands must be positioned given a minimum of 5 feet of pedestrian right-of-way clearance.
If available. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The reason why we're bringing this before you is a couple things have happened. If you remember a while back, we went through a pretty heavy lift of putting in a new sidewalk vending ordinance that did not allow folks to be vending on the sidewalk, especially in our downtown core due to the lack of space for pedestrian movement. Then there's also another ordinance that we have that's on the books that talks about sandwich board signs. You're not allowed to actually have a sandwich board sign in the right-of-way either, so that must be removed as well. And then we were also getting some complaints about the valet stands. And so the team was going around passing out flyers, letting folks know that they could not be using sandwich board signs. And so when the gentleman was talking earlier about it, that's really what it was. It was about removing sandwich board signs. And then that's where it became aware that, wait a minute, our valet folks need, if we've given them permission to actually operate within the right-of-way, they have to have some type of podium out there or stand out there to greet the customers. So we needed to, one, create a policy so that they could do it. And so that's what this would do, and also make clarification about where it can be placed and how it can be placed and what they have to maintain from a walkability perspective. But we also wanted to make sure they included some information on it because we've been getting complaints from folks about different operations, parking operations. So we felt like putting the location name where they're at. So for example, the Thompson Hotel. If the valet company is working for the Thompson Hotel, it would say Thompson Hotel. It would have the hours of actual operation that they're out there, the cost of service that it's available, the name of the valet company if they are actually using a valet company, and as well as a phone number or a way to contact them, so that if there's an issue or complaint, all of that information is readily available for the consumer to have available. So that's what this policy is actually doing. It is providing some of that ability to give better direction to our valet partners out there about the podium, where it can be placed, and information that needs to be readily available to the consumer. And this is based on some of the things that we've been working on really hard, as well as some of the complaints we've been hearing from the community as a whole. So that's what this is in front of you today.
Is there any guidelines or restrictions to the size of the stand, or is it spelled out somewhere like?
Well, that's why they have to maintain that 5 feet for pedestrian movement, which meets ADA accessibility requirements. So that's going to determine the size of the stand. If they are going to go get a huge stand and not provide me 5 feet, they cannot have the stand. So we felt it was better to make sure the space that met ADA accessibility was more defined than the actual stand itself. And there are some areas within our city that there's limited amount of sidewalks, so they're not going to have a grand stand. They're going to have a very small podium because there is just not as much accessibility on the sidewalk as we have in some of our newer areas where they've built out 20-foot sidewalks that perhaps they could have a bigger podium.
Yes, council member.
I just want to thank you for making sure you have contact information. I know that you are not alone, and I'm not alone, and my colleagues have been fielding lots of questions so that folks in here know about license plate readers in downtown parking garages, double charging people for parking, and being able to have that contact.
Right.
It's really important.
We're trying to get the information readily available to the consumers.
It sounds like a nice improvement. Okay. Is there a motion to approve this policy? We have a first. Is there a second? Second. We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. It's been approved. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Alicorn. All right. The last item on our agenda is chair and vice chair elections. And before we go to that, I just want to make a statement. So my term expires June of next year, and I am, after 14 years, planning not to re-up. When I started on the commission, I did not have gray hair, so you can see what it's done to me. And I've been honored to have been chair for, I actually cannot remember when I got elected. That's how long it's been. But so I think it's time to, as they say, to pass the leadership to new set of folks. But words can not describe the honor it's been to serve my colleagues as chair, to work on things, and to see actually the reason I got on the commission was to make improvements to how we managed traffic and parking in Nashville, and over the last several years, we've made lots and lots of progress compared to where we used to be. I appreciate Ms. Costonis for always keeping me legal, because there's nothing worse than being served. And I thank all my colleagues, staff, particularly Ms. and Director Alicorn. It's been a pleasure to serve. So our vice chair's not here, and I actually have a person I'd like to nominate as chair. Ms. Costonis, is it legal for me to do that?
Sure.
I'd like to.
They have a right to accept or not the nomination.
I'd like to nominate Commissioner Mason as chair of the commission. I think he'll do a wonderful job and brings a new, refreshing perspective to the position.
Second with honor.
All right, so we have a first and a second. Is there any other names? Okay. You got to accept.
I gladly accept.
Okay, he has gladly accepted, thank goodness. No, I'm just kidding. All right. All right. Okay. So, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, unanimous. Congratulations. You now get the gavel. Like now, so you gotta, we have to now have a vote for vice chair.
Well, if I may, nominate, first of all, thank you, Chair Green, for the nomination. Honored to follow in your footsteps and proud to be a part of this commission and help and work with NDOT and the community. With that, I would like to nominate Ms. Woods, if she will, as vice chair of the commission for the next term, if appropriate.
I will second that. So, all right.
Mr. Chair? Yes, I'll serve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposes?
I can't wait to see what Commissioner Green does in our next meeting, because, you know, he's gonna be footloose. Thank you.
I will say this.
Thank you for everything, Commissioner Green. It's been a wild ride. This is the 5th mayor I've had the honor serving under, and thank you for your steadfastness.
You're welcome.
And staff.
So, you know, I've mentored a new mayor and a vice mayor. So, Mr. Mason, you can mentor this council member to wherever she's going to end up next. So, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, sir.
All in favor? Meeting is adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.